Hello and welcome again to another video from the Marketing Study Guide. In this video I'm going to work through what are the main segment bases used in market segmentation, and I'm also going to outline reasons for and against using them. Okay, so as you probably know, market segmentation is a step in the process. So we start with our overall market. We group them into related sets based on the segmentation basis we're going to look at in this video. From that, we then select, using a criteria or assessments, the best target market. We then build a strategy around that target market, and our whole goal of all of this is to improve performance, make more money, build competitive strength for the company, etc. Okay, so what are we doing? We're looking at our market here and we're putting them in groups. And we're looking for what's called common and distinct groupings. So by common, it means that the people in here, that circle there, have something in common. And the people in this group have something in common. But they're also distinct. In terms of consumer behavior and their purchasing and their needs, this group is quite different to this group, who is quite different to this group. So that was common and distinct. And generally we look at various characteristics, we'll have a look in a second, but we're trying to group them on needs for a product, various personal characteristics, potentially demographics, attitudes, behaviors, etc. Okay, so to do that, we're going to look at different bases, and these are called segmentation bases. Now, in whatever textbook you have, they may vary slightly, but generally you will find geographic, and there's a whole bunch of subsets under that, different approaches, but the broad base is geographic, and then demographic, psychographic, behavioral, benefits sought, and hybrid. Now I'm going to work through all of these for you with a for and against. Okay, so geographic, as the name suggests, we're grouping it in basically locations. So we can be very broad. So we could have a whole continent or a region, Western Europe, Southeast Asia, a whole collection of related countries, or we can go down as small as the local neighborhood. The companies that you'll probably work for, they're probably doing it at a city-based or a state, province-based, or a region, etc. What we're looking for is the consumers are different. So we're not just grouping it necessarily for fun, but in those geographic areas, the consumers have different needs. Now, the advantage of using geographic segmentation is it's easy. It's a physical region, done. If we're a manufacturer and we've got logistics and products to move around, it is really handy because we're moving into a set geographic area. And if we work for a manufacturer that relies on wholesalers and retailers, for example, then again we know, okay, they're in our geographic area, they're a target for us to get our product to. If not, they're not part of us. Traditional media, which I'm calling TV, radio, newspapers, outdoor billboards, etc., things that are often based in a local area. So you have a local TV station, a local radio station. So it's very easy to then go off and say, hey, we just want to advertise here. And you can even do that a bit for, advertising online. They often have geographic targeting. So we can do that quite well. In addition, these are all big companies here. Local businesses will tend to use geographic. They'll be the local provider of a certain service or something. And if you're a large chain or you're franchising, you're expanding, you're probably looking at geographic areas to do that. Now, the reasons not to do it is we've got to assume that the consumers in that geographic area have a similar need. Okay, that may or may not be true. They might just live in the same city, but there is likely to be lots of differences. So generally, as professional marketers, if we use geographic as a starting base, we generally will need to segment the market further using another approach, because people in a big city or even a country are going to be quite distinctive when you start looking at them. So as a summary, geographic is probably an older form of segmentation. In economies where manufacturing is a large part of the economy and they're relying on physical production of goods, physically moving of goods, then geographic makes a lot of sense. Okay, I need to premise my negatives a little bit there, my against, is there could be often logic why geographic people living in geographic areas will have common different needs to other regions. So, for example, climate could change. So you could target a city that is in a hot climate versus a city where it snows. So that's going to change clothing, housing, energy, keeping the house warm, things that they do outside, seasonal stuff, transport, etc. And of course, as we're targeting internationally or regions of countries, the local culture, customs is going to affect a lot of things. So food, lifestyles, things they do, activities. So provided there is a logical reason for the geographics that will influence shopping and consumer behavior, then yes, in that case, it becomes a worthwhile segmentation base. Okay, let's have a look at demographics. These are simply measures of a population. So you can see a list there. We measure how people in different age groups or their age, what family structure they're in, what's the average level of education, and who's been to uni and who's finished high school, etc. And all of these things can be classified, and we can measure the population. And we can use that information to construct segments. Now, these are very commonly used. Okay, and there's multiple reasons why. First, they're very easy to do. Okay, we'll look at certain people, certain age, or a certain family structure, etc. They're easy to measure, and we usually can get them from government sources. Many countries will conduct a census and then compile that and then provide that. Many countries will provide that information, or some of that information, free and online. So we jump in, we've got it straight away. It's fast, immediate. And we can also tag it in to other segmentation approaches to build a richer view of our segments and our target markets. And I've got the point here that it's probably more of a profiling, a describing of the segment, rather than creating the segments. Now, the reason for that is a list of against why not to use demographics, or why not to rely on it only for segmentation. So it's giving you a characteristic of the population, how old they are, or what sort of jobs they tend to be doing. But it doesn't tell you anything. I've got limited information about them as a customer or a consumer. How do they work in the marketplace? We don't know. I think it is overly used because of all these things. They're easy to get, quick to get, cheap. And we end up with fairly simplistic generic segments, like our target market is young adults. Okay, well, this is fine, but that doesn't tell us much about us, that segment, and we really don't know what their needs are, or we don't know how to interact with them, etc. And we could end up with quite similar segments to competitors if they also do the same thing. We're all targeting older people, or teenagers, or young marrieds, or people who have a master's degree or something. And like with geographic, we assume that consumers in the same age group, occupation, income level, whatever, have similar needs. But again, they're going to be quite different. Think about you and your friends. You guys might have similar interests and activities because you know each other. But think about other people your age that you don't normally hang out with or aren't connected to. They're quite different. They do things that you don't do. They buy things that you don't buy. So putting everybody in the same category is, based on demographics, is probably a bit weak. So again, like geographic, we'll probably have to use another segmentation base to get to know them a little bit more as a consumer. And I've got here it's probably a more dated segmentation method. It used to be very, very common. And like I said, include it, add it, build your segments, but don't rely on it by itself. And please note I've got a separate video on discussing age segmentation, which is a common demographic approach, and the fors and against of that approach. Okay, let's have a look at psychographics. Fancy word. All it means is the word psycho there, how you think, and then we get into how you live your life, your attitudes, your personalities, your values, etc. Okay, so in simple terms, how people live, feel, and think, hence my diagram over here. What this gives us really powerfully is it understands people. Okay, so how they live their lives, what's important to them. Sometimes you'll see the word lifestyle analysis, which is another word for psychographic research, and often textbooks will use AIO, which means that psychographics is constructed by looking at people's activities, things that they do, what their interests are, hobbies and work, etc., and their opinions, values, attitudes, etc. So they're compiled that way. There's bunches of ways of doing it. Okay, so let's look at the for and against. So what we get is insight into people. Okay, notice I'm using the word people. I'm not using the word consumer. So we understand them as a person. Okay, we can get a really deep understanding of them. Okay, and we can dig down to what motivates them, what's driving them, why are they doing this? So it gives you an answer to why. Okay, if we can get across this and if we can spend time on it, etc., we're more likely to have a segmentation that gives us a deep understanding of the consumer, the person as a consumer eventually, and hopefully that should give us a competitive advantage. We know more about the marketplace, and we'll end up with very detailed and rich segment profiles, brand personas that we use to represent our target market. Now, unfortunately, there's a whole bunch of negatives to it that rules it out for a number of companies. First, as I said, we're explaining the person as a person, not a consumer. So it's about their lifestyles rather than their purchasing habits. So we still need to work and connect their lifestyles back to them as a consumer. This is very much based on a lot of research. This is not guesswork. So it's going to take surveys, focus groups, which all cost time and money to get, or we can acquire that at a for a fee. Okay, so there's a resource hurdle there, and it may not be as clear as to work with. It's not demographics, geographics, and even behavioral segments are very clear cut, and everyone can understand them. Here it's a little bit vaguer, and it takes some people when you're painting a picture of a person, it's harder to get sometimes that sense of them as a consumer. And of course, we're painting lifestyles and how they're thinking and how they're feeling and their values in life. So it may be harder for a marketer to construct a marketing mix that's going to be effective and actionable for those segments. Okay, then we lead to behavioral segments. And these are more mechanical. They're based on how people behave as consumers. So we've got this lady here in the shop, and we can see what she's got in her basket, and we see what she's touching. And the next time she comes in, we can watch her again or observe her through a loyalty card on the way out, and we can track her behavior as things change in the store and new products come in. So we have the opposite here. We know exactly what she's doing if we can capture it through video or loyalty cards or some other thing. But we don't know how she lives her life. We don't know why she's buying these things. We just know what she's buying. So we can see from gathering information and data, is she a loyal person in terms of brands? Does she switch? How sensitive is she to price and deals? What products is she using? How often does she buy them? We can even have a look at, through some surveys or some observation, which brands she approaches, which are in her brand set, which ones she's ignoring, and are there any sort of triggers that cause her to buy more or less than normal. Okay, so for and against, we have great insight to her as a consumer, okay, in terms of her actions and her behavior. We know what she does. We know when she does it, if we can gather that information effectively. And that allows us to conduct experiments. So we bring in a new product, we change the product, we change the packaging, we change the price, and we can fine tune our marketing mix based on that. And we can do that in a real shopping situation, or a test marketing situation. And if we can capture it, particularly supermarkets are good at this. Large supermarkets, they have loyalty cards and they're capturing people as they purchase either on store or online, etc. And they're tracking what people are doing and how they're modifying their behavior over time. So this is a very helpful tool for businesses in what's called the fast-moving consumer goods industry. So most products you'll see in a supermarket, I'm guessing that's bottles of oil and orange juice and, I don't know, tomato paste or something like that. They're all fast-moving consumer goods. So things that people buy quickly, they're in the shop, they're sold within days, away we go. Those companies work very well with behavioral segments. Okay, what's the against? Well, we know them as a consumer, but we don't know why. Why are they choosing that brand over that brand? We know they choose it every time, and that's their preferred brand, but why? So we end up with little bit of market insight. We're not getting any cut through in terms of information. And as I said, great for fast-moving consumer goods, but we're probably going to end up with similar target markets to our competitors. Like in a lot of industries, say food industries and beverage industries, for example, they target what's called heavy users. For example, in fast foods, a lot of purchases, I think it's like 60%, can't remember the exact number, of sales are to regular people who go to fast foods 3 or more times in a month. They tend to be, younger and single, etc., or on the road working, driving around, and they're the heavy users, as in they are a high usage rate of that product. So companies target them because they're the big spenders. Okay, so we end up with head-to-head competition. Generally, like I said, you got supermarkets capturing that data and then they sell that data. All you have to do is surveys or observations. So, in some industries, they won't have access to it. We just won't know. In a supermarket, remember, all your competitors are sitting on the shelf. So we can watch a customer come in and take brand A and then take brand B and brand C. And we can measure market share. If somebody's going to a fast food chain here and there, we're not watching them. So we've got to rely on survey or other data to gather that. And if somebody's going to a local hairdresser and then 6 months later they go to a different hairdresser and then to a different one, there's no way of really doing that. There's probably no payback on the data to even capture that. So some industries we just won't know. And down the bottom here I've got it's a transactional view. So it's like loyalty programs can capture ongoing, but typically it's what do they do today, what do they buy today, and try to work out a marketing model of why they bought it. Okay, then that leads us to what's called benefits sought. Okay, so these are what benefit does the consumer want? Okay, so we're looking at particular benefits provided by the competing products in the category. Okay, and I've got a list of potential ones here. There's a whole bunch of precise ones as we get into a particular type of product, but some people want the best quality, some people want the best price or a deal. I want a flexible product that's adjustable somehow. I want variety, the choice, service, etc. So each of these become a segment, okay, depending on what category we're looking at. Okay, so I've got an example there for snack food. So there will be some snacks that, obviously say a tasty snack. Or some say, hey, we've got gluten-free or low carb or something. Kids traveling, etc. So they're all benefits that somebody walks in and says, oh gee, I need something, I'm traveling tomorrow on a train all day, I just need some snacks. Or I've got to mind the grandchildren tomorrow, so I need something for them, etc. Or I feel like something, but I shouldn't really, what should I have? Okay, so it's like I'm after one particular benefit. Not important, that's what I'm after. So we're segmenting it that way. Okay, so this segmentation approach is actually quite good to guide us in terms of product design. We know that consumers want certain things. There's a segment there who is seeking out a snack product that is easy to travel with, let's give them that. Okay, so it helps with our product design, our product line extensions. Generally, we can put together very clear positioning because it's built around one or two key attributes or benefits. And we can know, oh gee, that's a segment. We have a savory snack, but we don't have a sweet snack. That's a gap in our offering. There actually is a gap for a low-calorie sweet snack. Nobody's offering that, but people want it. So there's a little segment there we can get into. Okay, so they're the positives: design, line extensions, gaps, and quite measurable via sales. The disadvantages is we end up looking at the product. Okay, people are buying a sweet, low-calorie snack, and we become very what's called product-centric. Our focus is on the product rather than the customer. We're not thinking about their needs. As a result, because we're too centered on today, we don't see trends. We're too focused on current, not the future marketplace, because we're watching current sales. We're seeing what they're buying, but we don't know why. We know they like it. We know they buy it regularly, and that's what they want, but we're not looking at the customer overall. And as with behavioral segmentation, as before, we tend to copy competitors. They bring out something that has a different attribute that seems to sell. A sweet snack with salt, for example, like a pretzel with chocolate or something. Oh, that's what we need to bring out, something similar, because there's a segment for that. Somebody wants salted caramel or something like that. And then you end up with this sort of constant battle going back and forward. And this is probably the biggest problem down here. It really only works for simple products where people are choosing off one key attribute. I'm after this. If we have a product that has a broader value proposition or a combination of attributes, it's not going to work for us. Okay, that leads us to what's called hybrid segments. And they're just a combination. So I've just picked three categories here: demographics, behavioral, psychographics, and we use them collectively. And in the middle there, we've got an overlap. And we use segments that are based upon a combination of approaches. Okay. Now, why would we use that? Because firstly, we're getting more information. We're getting, who they are, how they act, how they feel, how they think, putting it together, for example, in this case. So it's a combination of actions, motivations, descriptors, etc. That allows us to really paint a really solid picture of the segment, their needs, why they act, build our segment profiles, brand personas. And that should give us a big advantage in the marketplace. And like all of these bases, there's always a negative to it. Here are the reasons against. As we layer more and more segment bases and we say, okay, let's consider that, we're actually breaking the market down into smaller and smaller segments. So we end up with a lot more segments. And we may get to the stage where they're just not usable because we've got too many to look at, or we end up with a very defined segment that we can't work with as marketers. We might only have the ability to have two target markets, and we'll split the market into 25 segments. Or we don't have the ability to offer multiple marketing mix, product lines, etc. Again, as we split down, we can end up with segments that are simply too small. Okay, if that happens, we have to work backwards and combine them back. It's far more thinking, far more analytical, need a lot more data to do this. This is not an easy thing to do because we're combining so much. So this would take time. This potentially could take weeks or months to come up with some logical segments. So it really prohibits smaller businesses and requires a return on investment only for large companies. And to do that, they really need to have a database that is actually able to connect all of this. So connect demographics to psychographics to behaviors to geographics, etc. So while it's a great approach, it's really a larger company with time and effort and resources and the data to do this. So that's it. That's our 6 approaches, fors and against. Hopefully you found that helpful. Please check out my other videos on market segmentation.